Ricardo got lost while fishing at 67, but no one could have guessed that what he found would rewrite World War II history. Ricardo Mendoza had been fishing on the same boat for 45 years. The old wooden boat, Maria Elena, bore the name of his wife, who had passed away 5 years earlier. Every morning when he set out to sea alone, he would talk to her as if she were still by his side. "Good morning, my love," he'd say each morning, looking at the framed photo on the boat. "Today we're going to catch some nice fish for the grandkids." That morning he'd set out at exactly 5 a.m., just like always. He had 8 grandchildren and had promised to bring fresh fish to all of them. The youngest, Sophia, 6 years old, waited eagerly every evening for the fish her grandfather brought home. "Abuelo, what did you catch today?" she'd ask, running up to him. The excitement in her eyes was Ricardo's reason for living. The Pacific looked calm that morning, but Ricardo knew from 45 years of experience that the ocean's mood is far more complex than a weather report. There was a different smell on the northwesterly wind. A seaman's nose knows that smell: storm. The morning news forecast had said, "Calm and sunny weather will continue for the next 48 hours. But Ricardo never fully trusted radio forecasts. 45 years at sea had taught him nature's own language. When he cast his first line, the sun hadn't fully risen yet. The surface of the sea was golden, almost breathtakingly beautiful. That sight always reminded Ricardo of the same thing: how precious and how fragile life is. Maria Elena used to tell him, "Ricardo, you're not just fishing, you're dancing with the sea." Now, on these mornings without her, Ricardo kept up that dance alone. Around 10 o'clock, he'd landed a fine tuna. He imagined the way Sophia's eyes would light up. "Abuelo, did you really catch this one?" she'd ask excitedly. "It's huge." But right then the wind shifted, suddenly and violently. The sea turned from blue to dark gray, and the waves began to climb. Ricardo's boat, Maria Elena, wasn't fast, but it was reliable. For 45 years, it had brought him safely home. It had never failed him in a storm, but this time something was different. The wind seemed determined to drive the boat toward a particular direction, toward a particular destination. "Easy, Ricardo," he told himself. "You're 67, but you're still strong. You've weathered plenty of storms. This one will pass too." The engine was at full throttle, but the wind was stronger. The waves had passed 10 to 12 feet. Ricardo's aging hands were numb on the helm, but he knew he couldn't let go. If he did, the boat could veer out of control and capsize. The struggle went on for hours. His body ached, his breath grew short. Enduring a storm like this at 67 wasn't easy, but the truly shocking thing was the island that suddenly appeared in the direction the storm was pushing him. An island that existed on no nautical chart. The wind was so fierce that Ricardo could no longer control the boat. Maria Elena felt as if a giant invisible hand were shoving it along. The GPS glitched, spewing strange symbols. The radio went dead silent. The compass spun madly, pointing to nothing. "Maria Elena!" he shouted into the wind, calling his wife's name. "Give me strength. I need to get back to Sophia, to all the grandkids." The nightmare storm lasted 3.5 hours. Ricardo's body trembled with fatigue. His hands clutched the helm until they bled. For a 67-year-old man to withstand such a fury of nature was a miracle. When the storm died off abruptly, Ricardo looked around and was stunned. Ahead lay a lush, tropical island. Small but breathtaking, palm trees, white sandy beaches, a clear blue lagoon. He'd fished these waters for 45 years. He knew this region like the back of his hand, but he had never seen an island like this. It wasn't on any chart. His boat had been damaged. The engine wouldn't start. The sail was torn. And worst of all, she was taking on water. He had no choice but to make land. "Maria Elena," he said, gazing at his wife's photo, "looks like we're taking a little vacation here." The island was about 2 miles long and a mile across. High cliffs to the north, a long sandy beach to the south, dense tropical forest to the east and west. Mysterious hills rose in the middle. Ricardo started making camp. He had no tent, but he improvised a shelter from tarps, ropes, and pieces of wood salvaged from the boat. His water supply was scarce. For food, he had only the tuna he'd caught that morning. That first night was brutal. Ricardo had never felt so alone. The silence was so deep and heavy, his ears rang. His grandchildren must have been looking for him by now, especially Sophia. "Where's Abuelo?" She might be crying. "He said he'd bring me fish." The thought shattered Ricardo's heart. On the second day, he searched for water. He trekked toward the center of the island, and after about an hour found a small stream, crystal clear and drinkable. At least he wouldn't die of thirst. Following the stream, he saw it flowed from the foothills in the island's center. The hills were odd, bare rock, no trees at all. On the third day, he focused on food. The island had plenty of tropical fruits, bananas, coconuts, papayas, mangoes, and a few sweet varieties he didn't recognize. He also managed to catch small fish in the stream. He could survive, at least for a while. But how long? And more importantly, how would he get out? On the evening of the fourth day, a light glowed from the direction of the hills. Like firelight, his heart started to race. Was someone else on the island? He hurried toward it. Maybe a rescue team had arrived. Maybe he could go home. Maybe he'd see his grandchildren again. But what he saw in the forest would be the greatest shock of his life. This was where everything changed. As he approached the source of the light, he came upon a sight he wouldn't have imagined even in a dream. In a clearing in the forest stood a fully established military camp. But not modern, more like something from decades past. Old-style tents, vintage equipment, even clothing from another era. And by the fire sat three elderly men. They looked about Ricardo's age, maybe older. But the most startling thing was what they wore. Military uniforms. But which army, what period? As Ricardo drew nearer, he could clearly make out the insignia on their sleeves. World War II era U.S. Army uniforms. Impossible. World War II had ended 80 years ago. Who could these people be? "Hello," Ricardo said cautiously in Spanish. The three men sprang to their feet. The oldest reached for his weapon. The other two took up defensive positions. Their reflexes were sharp, their movements disciplined. "Stop right there!" "Who are you?" The oldest barked in English, his voice crisp with command. Ricardo's English was quite good. He'd worked with tourists for years, running fishing trips. "I'm Ricardo," he said, raising his hands. "A fisherman. The storm pushed me here. I mean no harm." The old man studied Ricardo for a long moment, trained military eyes analyzing every detail. Then he said something in military jargon to the other two. "Where are you from?" he asked. "Off the Mexican coast. I was fishing. The storm blew my boat off course." The man seemed to relax a little. "I'm Colonel William Peterson," he said in a formal tone. "This is Private Johnson, and that's Sergeant Miller. We're on duty here." "On duty?" Ricardo was baffled. "What duty? This island isn't on any map." There was a strange light in William's eyes, as if he hadn't spoken to anyone in ages, cut off from the outside world. "They sent us here after the attack on Pearl Harbor," he said slowly. "We were to track the Japanese Navy, gather intelligence. But the radio failed. Reinforcements never came." Ricardo's breath caught. Pearl Harbor, that attack happened in 1941, nearly 84 years ago. "Pearl Harbor," he repeated. "But that was a very long time ago." "What do you mean?" Johnson asked, worried now. He'd been quiet until then, but fear tinged his voice. "The attack on Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. It's 2025 now. 84 years have passed." The three men looked at each other. First shock, then denial, then dread crossed their faces. "Impossible," William whispered, his voice shaking. "We've only been here just a few years. 5, maybe 6. "No," Ricardo said, gently but firmly. 84 years. I was born in 1958. If the dates are right, you're much older than me." Johnson dropped to his knees and buried his face in his hands. "Dorothy, my wife Dorothy, my boy Tommy, they're almost certainly gone," Ricardo said with compassion. "I'm so sorry. But your children, your grandchildren, may still be alive." Sergeant Miller stepped forward, a deep shock in his eyes. You're really from the outside world? What happened to the war?" "The war ended in 1945, Ricardo said. "America and the Allies won. Japan surrendered. Germany was defeated. The world has changed a lot since then. Ricardo told them about the modern world, the internet, cell phones, satellite tech, space travel, climate change, NATO, the European Union. The three men listened, transfixed. But how can this be? William asked. If 84 years truly passed, we should all be over 100. I was born in 1920. I should be 105. But I feel like I'm in my 70s. This island is special, Miller said. We noticed from the start. Nothing about it is normal. It slows aging, Ricardo's mind reeled. What do you mean, slows aging? Johnson stood and showed him around the camp. What Ricardo saw amazed him. They had built a full military outpost and improved it over the years. Gardens, rainwater systems, workshops, even a small library. Everything was old style but functional. The first years were brutal, Johnson said. Food was scarce, shelter was hard, but it was like the island helped us. Fruit in season all the time, water that never runs dry, the weather always mild, Miller said. It isn't normal. And the most important thing, William added, we didn't really age. Our hair turned white, sure, but our bodies, our energy, our health, it's like time stopped for us. Everything we need is here, William said proudly. The island feeds us, protects us, keeps us alive. It's as if it wants us here, that it has a purpose for us. But what purpose? Ricardo asked. Why would it keep you safe for 84 years? Johnson pulled a weathered map from an old bag. The paper was brittle and frayed at the corners, but still legible. We studied this for years, Ricardo. This island, it's not just a location. Strange markings covered the map. Ancient Polynesian symbols, mystical lines, indecipherable script. Polynesians considered this island sacred, Miller said. They called it Manawamwea. What does that mean? Ricardo asked. The place where time stops, Johnson said. The island where spirits rest, they also said. Ricardo's skin prickled. A place where time stops. Was it legend or real? He hadn't seen the biggest surprise yet. What they were about to show him would change his view of the world forever. At first, we didn't believe any of it, William said. We thought it was just superstition. But then, we saw the proof. What proof? Ricardo asked, intrigued. The three looked at one another. Then William nodded. We can show you. But brace yourself. What you're about to see might shake you. Johnson stepped forward. Ricardo, do you truly want to come with us? There may be no going back. What do you mean? Once you learn the island's secret, you may want to stay, Miller said, and it might be that leaving won't even be possible. Ricardo thought of home. He needed to return. His grandchildren needed him, but he also felt he was close to solving a great mystery. Show me, he said, resolute. William motioned. Then come, and listen carefully to everything I say. They headed toward the hills in the island's center. The path was vague, steep in places, but the three men knew it by heart. We made this trek in our second year, Johnson said as they walked. We were mapping the island, looking for food and water. Half an hour later, they reached the foot of the hills. There, a large cave mouth yawned open, wide at the entrance, dark within. When we found this cave, we were stunned, Miller said. What's inside is incredible. The moment they stepped in, Ricardo sucked in a breath. It was a natural cavern, but the walls glittered with thousands of crystals. Purple, blue, green, gold, pink, every color lighting up the cave. These crystals, William said, this is the island's secret. Ricardo touched the crystals. A strange energy pulsed into him, and his exhaustion seemed to melt away. His joint pain faded. His breath came easy. His mind cleared. You feel it, don't you? Johnson asked. Ricardo nodded. Though he was 67, he felt 50 in that moment, maybe even younger. We've lived with these crystals for 84 years, Miller said. Their energy kept us young, kept us healthy. These crystals exist only on this island, William said. You won't find anything like them anywhere else. We tested that in a dozen ways. How do they work? Ricardo asked. They emit a special kind of energy, Johnson said. It slows the aging process, accelerates cellular repair. For 84 years, we felt like men in our 30s, Miller said. But there's a price. What price? Ricardo asked, uneasy. William's face clouded. The moment we leave this island, Ricardo, our true age catches up. When the crystal's effect stops, our bodies rush to their real age. You tried it? Twice, Johnson said. The first time in 1943, we built a raft and set out. The farther we got from the island, the faster we aged. Hair went white, wrinkles appeared, our strength drained. The second time was 1967, Miller said. We were better prepared. Same result, 10, 15 kilometers out and our bodies started to fail. The explanation chilled Ricardo. So the island was both paradise and prison. What about me? If I stay, will I just keep getting younger? We don't know, William said. You're the first outsider in 84 years. It might affect you differently, or not at all, Ricardo thought. He could stay, regain his youth, live for years, but his grandchildren, especially Sophia, needed him. I need a night to think, he said. Of course, William said. This isn't a simple decision. We've been thinking about it for 84 years. But Ricardo didn't yet know that the most important reason he'd leave the island wouldn't only be his love for his grandchildren, it would be his mission to bring these three heroes home. That night, Ricardo returned to the camp. He sat with the three soldiers by the fire and listened to their stories. I was drafted at 19, Johnson said, voice heavy with sorrow. Dorothy and I had just married. We just returned from our honeymoon. We hadn't had the chance to start a family. He pulled an old photo from his pocket, black and white, edges worn. This is my Dorothy. I told her, I'll be home when the war ends. Maybe a year. Miller took out a photo too. This is my Susan. She was 3 when she last saw me. Daddy, when are you coming home? She used to ask. Soon, sweetheart, I'd say. William produced a thicker album. This is my family. My wife, Martha, my boys, Robert and James. Robert was 5, James 3. I fought for them, to protect them. Ricardo studied the photos. These men weren't just soldiers. They were husbands, fathers, loved ones. And they had been separated from their families for 84 years. You never tried to return? Ricardo asked. We wanted to, desperately, William said. But what could we do? When we left, we aged. And who would believe us? Who would accept soldiers from 84 years ago? Things are different now, Ricardo said thoughtfully. I'm your witness. I can tell your story. The modern world would welcome you as heroes. The three men exchanged glances. The idea both excited and frightened them. But we'll age, Johnson said, maybe very quickly, and die. Maybe, Ricardo said honestly. But at least you'll age with honor, on your soil, with your families. We don't have families anymore, Miller said, eyes downcast. Your children's children might be alive, Ricardo said, hopeful. Grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. Your bloodline, your legacy, it may still be out there. William stared into the fire for a long time. Then he turned to the others. What do you say? Isn't 84 years long enough? Johnson nodded. I'll never see Dorothy again. But maybe I can die in a way that honors her memory. Miller stood. If Susan had lived, she'd be 87. Even if she's gone, maybe her children, her grandchildren are alive. Then it's decided, William said. Ricardo, if you'll help us, we'll leave this island with you. Is your boat working? Johnson asked, practical as ever. The engine's busted, but it can be fixed. I've got parts on board. It'll take a few days. We'll help, Miller said. We've learned a thing or two in 84 years. At that critical moment, Ricardo realized his decision would change not only his life, but the course of history. The next morning, the four of them began repairs. Ricardo's 45 years of experience and the soldiers' disciplined, systematic work made the perfect team. I'm a communications specialist, Johnson said, bending over the radio. I can get this working. What I learned 84 years ago still counts. Miller had the engine apart, cleaning each component. I was a mechanic, tanks, planes. This engine is child's play. William mended the sails and plotted the route. Navigation is my specialty. We won't get lost in these waters, but we must chart the course precisely. Ricardo oversaw everything. He knew the boat inch by inch. I've fished with this boat for 45 years. I know Maria Elena, what she needs, how she runs, what parts are where. By the second day, the engine sputtered to life. Miller's hands seemed like magic. Military training, he said with a grin, teaches you how everything works. To survive. On the third day, Johnson had the radio transmitting. Testing, he said into the mic. Test, test. Anyone read me? Static for now, but it was progress. On the fourth day, William finished the sails. If the wind cooperates, we can make it even without the engine, he said, gauging the breeze with a veteran's eye. By the evening of the fifth day, the boat was ready. Engine running, radio receiving, sails mended, food and water stocked. Last time I'll ask, Ricardo said, looking at his three friends. Are you sure? This island kept you safe for 84 years. Once we leave, you'll start aging, maybe fast. You may not survive, William stood. The other two followed, coming to a soldier's stance. Ricardo, he said, voice firm, we've lived 84 years. It's enough. It's time to go home. We won't turn back. But your homes are gone, Ricardo reminded them. Your families, your friends, the world you knew, all changed. Our home is America, William said proudly. Home is anywhere our flag flies. That's where we'll die. Johnson added, a soldier's greatest honor is to complete the mission and return home. Ours lasted 84 years, but now it's done. Miller finished it. Living here was pleasant, but it wasn't a life. It was just existing. Real life requires risking something. And right then, Ricardo understood. He wasn't just bringing three heroes home. He was about to change history. On the sixth morning, before sunrise, Maria Elena slipped off the island's shore. This time there were four aboard, a 67-year-old fisherman and three World War II veterans. The sea was calm, the breeze gentle, and in their favor. Ricardo held the compass, William calculated the route, and Johnson scanned rescue channels on the radio. Are you scared? Ricardo asked as they set out. Of course, Miller said, candid as ever. For 84 years we weren't afraid, because we had nothing to lose. Now we do. Hope. Is that a good thing? The best, William said. Fear is proof you're alive. On that island we weren't afraid because we weren't really living. They sailed in silence for 2 hours, each man alone with his thoughts. Ricardo pictured his grandchildren, how Sophia would greet him. The soldiers imagined America after 84 years. How much would it have changed? Would anything be familiar? 2.5 hours later, Johnson shouted, Signal! A clear signal. Someone's hearing us. This is Coast Guard Station 743, came a crisp voice over the radio. We read you. Please identify yourselves and give your position. Ricardo took the microphone, heart pounding. This is Ricardo Mendoza, fishing vessel Maria Elena. We are 4 on board, all safe. Ricardo Mendoza, the voice sounded surprised. You've been missing for 6 days. The whole fleet's been looking. Your family's frantic. Tears pricked Ricardo's eyes, so they had been searching. Yes, it's me. And we have very special guests. Guests? What kind of guests? Ricardo looked to William. The colonel nodded. I've found 3 World War II soldiers, missing for 84 years, a long silence. Then, Ricardo, are you all right? Did you hit your head? Please be clear. I'm very clear. Colonel William Peterson, Private Johnson, Sergeant Miller. Missing since 1941. This can't be a joke. William took the mic. This is Colonel William Peterson, United States Army, 7th Infantry Brigade. Serial number 17,489. I was sent on a special mission after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Dead silence. Minutes later, a different, more formal voice. Colonel Peterson, this is Commander Thompson. Please state your date of birth and your mother's maiden name. March 15th, 1920. My mother's maiden name is Harrison. Ricardo listened, heart pounding. The Coast Guard must be checking the records. 5 minutes later, the radio crackled. Colonel Peterson, your records have been found in the archives. You were listed MIA in the Pacific in 1941. How, how is this possible? It's a long story, Commander. But we're alive, we're safe, and we want to come home. Transmit your coordinates. We're on our way. Everyone would soon know the truth, but the biggest shock would come when Ricardo reached home. An hour later, 3 Coast Guard cutters surrounded them. The first to spot Ricardo was his granddaughter, Sofia. The little girl ran to him and leapt into his arms. Abuelo, where were you? I cried so much. Mom said maybe you were gone. Ricardo hugged Sofia tight. He was 67, tired, but his heart felt 20 because he'd reclaimed his greatest treasure. Don't cry, mija, he whispered, stroking her hair. I'm here. And I have an incredible story to tell you. The Coast Guard commander spoke with the 3 elderly soldiers, incredulous. Your IDs were marked missing in action 84 years ago. How can this be? Calmly but firmly, William, Johnson, and Miller told their story. The secret island in the Pacific, the 84-year vigil, the cave of crystals where time slowed, the aging held at bay. Not everyone believed them at first. It sounded too fantastical. But the evidence was right there. Authentic 1940s uniforms, original dog tags, photos from the wartime years, period gear, and most astonishing of all, their medical scans. Men who should be 105 look closer to 75 or 80. This defies medical explanation, said the ship's medical officer. These men should be over 100, but their bodies are decades younger. News spread fast. When they reached shore, reporters, TV crews, and crowds were waiting. Century's biggest mystery, one journalist shouted. Missing soldiers found after 84 years, read another headline. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Just when they thought it was over, no one knew the small crystal Ricardo had brought from the island would upend the scientific world. Before leaving, Ricardo had slipped a small crystal into his pocket, a little keepsake. He had no idea it would cause such a stir. Dr. Emily Roberts, head physician at the military hospital, examined the 3 soldiers and turned to Ricardo. There's a 25 to 30-year gap between these men's chronological and biological ages. This doesn't fit anything we know. They mentioned crystals, Ricardo said. A cave full of them on the island. Crystals? Dr. Roberts' eyes lit up. Do you have one? Ricardo took the small crystal from his pocket, purple-blue, palm-sized, glowing softly as if from within. Dr. Roberts gasped. I've never seen a structure like this. We need to get it to a lab immediately. The next day, university labs analyzed the crystal. The results shocked the scientific community. This crystal, said mineralogist Dr. Jennifer Hayes, contains elements not found anywhere else on Earth, and it emits a very specific type of radiation. What kind of radiation? Ricardo asked. One that slows cellular aging, Dr. Hayes said. It preserves telomere length, prevents free radical damage. Johnson leaned in. So we really were younger on that island? Yes, Dr. Hayes said, excited. This crystal could slow cellular aging by 300 to 400%. An 84-year-old could have cells like a 30-year-old. The discovery exploded worldwide. Scientists from every nation came to study the crystal, down to each molecule. This is a revolution in medical science, said Nobel laureate biologist Dr. Sarah Chen. It could launch a new era in the fight against aging. But the biggest question remained. Where was the island? And could it be found again? Ricardo had given detailed coordinates, GPS position, compass bearings, the island's shape, everything recorded. But the island couldn't be found. A rescue ship searched the coordinates a week later. Nothing. A second expedition with advanced sonar and satellite tech. Still nothing. Impossible, the search leader said. Ricardo's coordinates are precise, but there's no island there. Maybe the island appears only under certain conditions, Dr. Hayes suggested. Special weather patterns. Or maybe what? Maybe it reveals itself only to those who need it. Mystical? Yes, but there was no better explanation. 6 months later, Ricardo was back to fishing every morning, but now he was famous. The whole world knew his story. Netflix had a documentary, Hollywood a film, books had been written. The media called him the Crystal Man. Journalists called daily. Scientists asked for interviews. William, Johnson, and Miller had returned to America. The Pentagon held a special ceremony. After 84 years, their mission was officially considered complete. They had aged, yes, but they had regained their honor. They received top care at a military hospital and pensions. Most importantly, their descendants had been found through DNA testing, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Johnson's 4 grandkids lived in Brooklyn and New Jersey. They had never known their grandfather, but DNA confirmed everything. "My granddad was a war hero," said his eldest grandson, Michael. "Mom always said so." "We just thought he'd died," Miller's granddaughter, also named Susan like his daughter, was a teacher in California. "Learning that my grandfather is alive is the greatest miracle of my life," she said. William's family was the biggest, 14 grandchildren, 23 great-grandchildren, and 8 great-great-grandchildren. They held a massive family gathering in Massachusetts. "We waited 84 years, William said, tears in his eyes. "Every second was worth it." As for Ricardo, his life had changed the most. He was no longer just a fisherman. He was a globally known explorer and storyteller. Research on the crystal was progressing rapidly. New discoveries, new theories every day. "The first anti-aging serum could be ready in 2 years, Doctor," Hayes said. "Thanks to Ricardo's discovery, we may be at the start of the greatest medical breakthrough in human history." But for Ricardo, the most important part was the life lessons he'd learned on that island. His granddaughter Sophia now joined him on the boat. "Abuelo, will you tell me the island story again?" she asked constantly. "Of course, mija," Ricardo would say. "But this time, you learn to tell it too. Because it isn't just my story anymore. It's yours as well." Each evening, he sat before his video camera and kept sharing, "Hi, friends, I'm Ricardo. I was lost at 67, and I came back at 72. Let me tell you something. Age is just a number. 5 years ago, what I lost on that island wasn't myself. It was my fear. And what I found wasn't just 3 heroes. It was my own courage. William, Johnson, and Miller showed me that hope never dies. They waited 84 years and never gave up. Now they're with their families. They're 105, but they're happy because they came home." 5 years later, Ricardo was now 72, but he still set out with Maria Elena every morning. That discovery had changed his life completely. Sophia was 11 now and learning to fish with her grandfather. Every summer she worked on the boat, soaking up life lessons. "Abuelo," she'd asked last week, "did you ever see that island again?" "No, mija," Ricardo had said. "I think the island shows itself only to those who need it. Back then, I needed it, to save myself and to bring 3 heroes home." William, Johnson, and Miller still lived in the U.S. They had aged over the 5 years, but with honor. They received the best care and the love of their families. Johnson was now 109, still telling war stories to his grandkids. Miller was 110 and still strong, teaching his granddaughter Susan's children about their great-grandfather's courage. William was 105, the family patriarch. "After 84 years of waiting," he'd say, "I finally received the greatest gift, family." Anti-aging serums derived from crystal research had reached the market. They weren't as potent as the crystal, but they slowed aging by about 50%. Thanks to Ricardo's discovery, average life expectancy has increased 20 to 30 years, Dr. Hayes said. "It's revolutionary." But the island itself still couldn't be found. Hundreds of searches, millions of dollars, no trace. "The island reveals itself only to those it chooses," Ricardo would say, "and I was one of its chosen." Every evening, he sat before his camera and continued, "Hello, friends, I'm Ricardo. I'm 72, and let me tell you, the best adventures start when you least expect them. 5 years ago, when I got lost, I thought my life was over, but I learned it's never too late. At 67, I made history. William, Johnson, and Miller are with their families, and they're happy. Their 84-year vigil was not in vain. If you're facing hard times, remember, every storm may be pushing you exactly where you need to go. On this channel, I share stories of courage that defy age. Whether you're 20 or 80, there's a hero inside you. If these stories inspire you, please subscribe. We're stronger together, and remember, the greatest treasure is finding your way back to the people you love. Ricardo turned off the camera. Sophia laughed in the yard. His other grandkids played nearby. He was 72, but his heart was still young. That night he slept peacefully, clutching the photo of Maria Elena and thinking of his three comrades in arms. Ricardo's story went on, this time together with the whole world. Subscribe. Courage has no age.